So, Zach, first of all, a massive warm welcome to you to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm going to give people a bit of context, first of all, as to why you're on the podcast. So, the first time that I came across Zach, and I've come across Zach many times on Instagram, I'm not a massive user of Instagram, but every time I've gone on, Zach's content has come in front, almost like the algorithm knows what I need. And we were laughing about that before the show started. So, Zach's channel is all about addiction, his experiences of addiction, and also allowing other people to come on to share their experiences. And the content really resonated with me because I've got my own story of addiction. I haven't massively talked about that. Why have I not talked about that? Probably partly because of shame, probably partly because of judgment. That's probably something we're going to talk about in this episode because that's massive in itself. And I wanted to bring Zach on to share his story because I think there's a lot of similarities between our stories, and I want to use his story as a bit of an opportunity to tell my story. So, Zach, I guess let's start at the beginning because you've given me a flavour of a bit of your story, and it just sounds mind-blowing. But walk us through, I guess, first of all, your childhood. How did you enter this world? What was your experiences like as a young person?
0 to 5 was, I'd say, fairly normal, working class family. Mom and dad had a long relationship. Dad worked excessively, so I didn't see him a great deal. Mum always my go-to, love, affection, attention, comfort. She was kind of my everything, really. One of 4 siblings, older brother, older sister, younger sister, so I'm a middle child. That always goes well. So yeah, 0 to 5 was fine, and then at 5 years old, around 5, my mother became an alcoholic, which kind of destroyed everything. My dad became extremely violent. He's coming home to a house that was just a mess, and the shit out of my mum, in fairness, and also us kids as well. Anybody who just got in his way. So yeah, my life very quickly went from stable and normal to volatile, unsafe, scary. And I lost my mother. I lost my primary caregiver. I lost that part of my childhood that I craved and needed the most, because I was also quite different to my siblings. My mother and I both have blue eyes. I looked more like my mum. We were a lot closer. I was much more affectionate, whereas the rest of my siblings were more like my dad, I would say. So that loss, I think, really kind of destroyed everything. And then also, abuse from both sides, and seeing my mother overdose and try and commit suicide, having school ambulances for her. This was at 6, 7 years old. Just looking after my little sister, waiting for ambulances to come. It happened at least 3 times, I think, I can remember. So again, you can just imagine chaos. It was chaos. And that lasted until I was 10, 11. And, my dad's violence never really stopped, even when they split up. In between those years, several times going into hostels where, mothers were fleeing their abusive husbands and taking their children. So being woken up in the middle of the night to a black and blue mother with her face out here saying, "Zach, I'm going. Do you want to come with us?" And so, yeah, of course, I always want to go with my mum. And then we went to hostels, and, the kids were violent. We got beat up there. I got hit in the face with a metal pole once. Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. And then when they split up, I hated both of them, to be honest with you, for various reasons. And I spent as much time away from home as I possibly could. I was just out with friends and, started taking drugs at around. So I think I started smoking at 13, cocaine at 15, and yeah, you can imagine where it went from there.
So, well, what a story already from the beginning. So I think to kind of weave in, because I'm going to weave in bits of my story and see where we kind of tally up. I think my childhood was I never had a great relationship. Well, I never even knew my biological dad. Essentially, my mum, my biological dad was my mum's landlord. She was renting a room. They got together. My mum was pregnant, and then on the day she came home with me, that was it. Her all her stuff was outside because she hadn't paid the rent. So that was my entry into the world. We lived in bed and breakfasts all around London for a good few years. Then my mum met my stepdad, who's my brother's dad. He brought me up, but where do I even start with him? Heart is in the right place, but totally emotionally unaware of himself and other people. So I had it wasn't a bad childhood, but it was my mum made up the role of both parents, definitely. I guess my first experience with drugs was when I was about 15 at school, smoking cannabis. It was all fun and games, made me absolutely have the giggles and probably the best nights out. And it made me accept that I am a gay man, and it made me more confident. That was the first time for me. So to bring this back to you, so you go through this absolutely awful time. You're at kind of a pinnacle moment in your life when you get to that age of 15, 16, where you're starting to have to make big decisions about what you're going to do with your life. Yeah. What did you do? Where did you go when you left school? What was life like? Because it sounds like it was bloody horrendous.
Well, I had. So when I was 15, my dad, for all of his flaws, one thing that he did do was provide financially. That was all that was it. That was his go-to with anything. He didn't know anything else. And he actually bought me a market stall when I was 15. So I ran that when I was from 15 to 17, kind of gave me my grounding into learning how to communicate and sell. And then went into IT recruitment for I was 17.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah, I did that. So I've been in recruitment since I was 17, yeah. Then did 2 years until I was 19, and I went to medical recruitment, did 2 years there, so 4 years total, 21, started my own company. As I was saying to you earlier, addiction kind of really got hold of me around 23 when my success was at the highest. And yeah, I ended up losing it all, going to rehab at 24, really with the only one intention, which was to get my company back, which anyone would know never works. If you're not doing it for yourself because you want to be there, rarely will you get close to the same results in being clean and being in recovery. So as soon as I come back out and didn't get the company, I went back to it. And yeah, over the next sort of 4 or 5 years, probably the worst, despite how difficult childhood was. I think compare that really to the depths of addiction around 26 to 28. I was, incredibly dark for a very long time.
So to kind of just go into this point in your life, and the reason why I want to ask you these questions is, like I alluded to a moment ago, I think shame is a massive part of it. And it's I guess even now in my life, I portray a life that a lot of people would look at very successful, own a company. The funny thing is, to anyone that doesn't know this, well, me and Zach work in the same industry. So we both work in recruitment, and I'm going to, in a moment, try and paint a picture of what the recruitment industry is like to people that don't know it, because it is a bit fueled in taboo. But I do think it lends itself to drug use massively. And I guess that's an interesting kind of a conversation in itself. But to bring this back to you then, so you went into the recruitment industry at 17. Now, how would you describe the recruitment industry, Zach? Give it your best shot of trying to explain it to people that don't work in it, what it's like, and then I'll try and give it my best shot. Notice I've thrown you into this first.
I'd say it's predominantly now environment full of ego, money-driven, money-motivated, and it's really a lot of bravado. It's very competitive as well, and it's all about who can be the best, who's number one, who makes the most money, who has the nicest car, who has this, who has that, and if you do well, it's all about celebrating doing well, and that goes hand in hand. It's like more than half the people, 60% that I've ever worked with, take coke and go out and get steaming on a Friday or a Thursday. For me, when I was, in my peak on Thursdays afternoons, so to let the whole company leave, and we'd all just go get smashed together.
That's
And
quite. I think in recruitment they call it Thursdays. I think it's even captioned with a word, with a
yeah,
title.
Thursday. Yeah, it's and a lot of recruitment agencies they'll have beer fridges in the office.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, it's just it's part of the culture, isn't it? It's almost kind of like a watered down version of perhaps London stockbrokers.
I compare it to that a lot. I think you're right in what you're saying. People go into that industry because they are buying in on a dream, the dream that we all want. And when we come in, to this industry, I think a lot of us are quite naive. We buy into this dream, and the dream is to have a home, to have a car, to have all those things that we want in life. And I think we all go into it with a bit of a material view. I went into it going from a position of never having had much money. I'd grown up. I'm not going to say that I was wearing the same school shoes 2 years in a row. Definitely not. But I didn't have a lot of money. And I distinctly remember when I was maybe about 11, my mum, she didn't tell me this at the time, she sold her entire pension just to send me on a ski trip. And but I really appreciated what I had. I went into the industry a lot later than you. I was about 27. I'd already had 2 previous careers, one as cabin crew flying around the world for Virgin Atlantic, and then a few years in the police. I didn't join the recruitment industry in a great place. I joined it. My fuel and what made me do so well was I had the fear. I'd gone from a salary of 50,000 as a police officer to 18,000 with my mum living in my flat in London, which I had to pay a mortgage for. And every month I was bringing in way less than what I needed. So yes, I wanted the big, car or whatever. That was but to me, that was so far away. What I just wanted was to be bringing in the amount of money I needed every month to be able to pay what I had outgoing. And I was going from a place of fear. But yes, it is a very male driven environment. It's very ego based because the people that are performing the best are looked up to, they're put on a pedestal, and it's hard to explain what that's like to people outside. So you went into the industry. Talk us through, because your agency was hugely successful. Its turnover is way beyond what my agency is at the moment. Walk us through how it went from being perhaps something that you were doing as a bit of fun to when did it start to become a problem, or when would you say now looking back it was becoming a problem, your drug use?
The first time I noticed it being a real problem was actually when I was in the IT recruitment industry when I was about 19, just before I left. I started trying to sell cocaine, which went terribly because it started off I would sniff a little bit and sell some, and that was okay for about 2 weeks. And then I was like, okay, I'll just sniff all of the profit and then sell the rest. And then eventually, this is the span of about 4 weeks, by the way. That's how long my career as a drug dealer lasted. And then by the end of that, I was just sniffing it all and having no money. And then I was performing terribly at work because I was doing it on weeknights. And similarly to you, at that point, I had to leave that company, and I moved out at this point, and I had to go back home and live with my dad, which was, I'm needless to say, I just couldn't bear to be there for any period of time. So I actually stopped taking coke for a whole year at that point because, like you, the fear of having to stay there and spend a minute longer in that environment than I needed to was just unbearable. So I just went to work. And then, so for that year was okay. And then I started taking gear towards the second year of my medical recruitment career. And it was getting worse because I wasn't performing that well towards the end. Not that's a lie. I was performing well, but I wasn't showing up. I was outperforming everyone, but I wasn't working Fridays and Mondays. And they hated that, and they couldn't fire me at the time because they didn't have really much reason to, because I was always putting out sick notes and everything else. And I was just making so much money for them. I was making millions a year for them. So there's nothing that they could do to get me out. And then eventually I did get sacked because I did give them reason to, because coupled with my absent behaviour, I managed to get into a terrible altercation with someone in the office, which resulted in a smashed computer screen. And then my motivation behind becoming more successful was the fact that they fired me, and I was like, "Well, I'll show you. Watch what I'm going to do." And then, yeah, I worked extremely hard for 2 years of the first year, the first couple of years of my new business, and then after, like I said, at around 23, when it was really earning a lot of money. And for me, it was anyway. I was earning 250, 300K a year at 22, 23 years old, and I just thought, well, I'm set for life. But there's a great thing that Johnny Depp said, and it's that money doesn't change you, it reveals you. And yeah, I feel like it really did. It revealed all of my wounds. It made me the worst version of myself, really. Or really just brought out all of my trauma, all of my ego, and it just all went to my head, and I was just turning up whenever I wanted. I was treating people like shit because I was tired and angry and just wanted to go back out. And yeah, so I'd say 20, 23, 24 is a very long-winded answer for you. But yeah,
Oh, no, it's very interesting.
23, 24, after all of that kind of progress through, using drugs, that was when it really started to become a problem.
It's there is a lot of similarities between our story. For me, it was this is a long story. You notice this, you go down these rabbit holes when you explain this. So my story, and I have explained a bit about this on the Soul Sync, was when I was in the police, I had a bloody awful time. So I had a line manager who was my line manager in the police, abusing me, bullying me, even when I'm sexually assaulted. That's a whole nother story. But at home, I was in a domestic violence relationship. So anyway, ended up breaking up with this guy after, a really, 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 really difficult time. Then when I finally managed to break up with him, 2 weeks after breaking up, 4 a.m. in the morning, I get an almighty thud at my flat door. Like literally someone was about to barge the door down, went and answered it, and it was 4 police officers. I was arrested for a whole range of false allegations that were made against me on the back of breaking up with this awful guy, this narcissist. Anyway, that resulted in an 18 months of being on bail. Eventually, I had to go for a 5-day Crown Court trial. And then I eventually went back to the police. But basically, I had the trial on a Friday. It finished on a Friday. Got the verdict at 4:30. At 5 o'clock, I had the Met ring me back up. Now, how are you? Straight back into work Monday morning, 9 o'clock, please. But when this does have what happened was I was getting really paranoid when I was on bail that I was being watched, I was being followed. So I decided to one night. Managed to persuade my mum, which wasn't easy, to move into my flat in London. And at 2 a.m. one night, whilst on bail, I packed my bags and fled to Manchester. Why Manchester? Because I'd once had a night out there and thought it was an all right place. Really good grounds to move. But I was almost living. Well, exactly. But I was living this secret life. I was living a life of, because I didn't tell because I lived in a house share. I moved into a house share in Manchester. Everyone there thought I had a job that was work from home, working for some research company. But actually, I was under so much pain on the inside. What I then did as well was I got a cash in hand job on Canal Street in a bar. I ended up making some friends. And then I ended up going on nights out and being around these bar people. They were taking what was illegal high, MCAT, the most disgusting drug in the world. Which I then started doing every weekend. But it was escapism for me. I had all this stress going on with the police thing hanging over me like a dark rain cloud, not knowing if I was going to go to prison for something I hadn't done. And it was giving me escapism, but it probably wasn't very healthy because actually I was living a fake life. No one knew any of my circumstances. But for that reason, I couldn't think about it because when I was out with friends, I'd be living this different life. So then, that was probably when drugs re-entered my life. But then they came up again, funnily enough, when I started my own business. I think this is where our stories cross over. So I started my business. I initially started my recruitment agency with a friend. Never a great move, just to start it with a friend who's got no experience in recruitment. But, that for me, you make a lot of bad decisions when you first start a business, I think. Naivety. But then he left because it wasn't working. He wasn't a recruiter. He couldn't do recruitment. He had no aptitude of sales, became apparent. And I'd made this deal with him where we'd split it all down the middle. Well, hang on a minute. I was bringing in $250,000 in the first few months. He'd brought in 4,000. There was a big problem. So he left. And then I started doing cocaine on a Friday night as... Well, it started once every couple of weeks on a Friday night as a bit of letting off steam because I'd worked so hard for the week. Then it started quite quickly to become every Friday. Then it was every weekend pretty much. And then probably within a matter of 4 months, it was every day. And one of the most things I remember is I'd gone from doing it out and about with people to then doing it just out when I was out to then just doing it alone. And I remember that and at the time, do you know what it was? Was it made me have a bit of escapism. It made me forget about work. It made me more confident. And I remember a turning point whereby the guy used to do a deal where you would get 7 bags for the price of 5 bags if you buy 5 bags. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is much more cost effective. But then you get to the end of the night and it would all be gone. And it's a slippery slope because even though you think to yourself, and I don't know what your experiences are like, I am a smart person, but I think sometimes the smartest people can be like the copious amounts of common sense. When I stand back and look back, I think, how the hell did I get myself into this mess? How did I not have alarm bells ringing sooner that I was going down this direction? And eventually, unlike you, Zach, I'm very, very lucky that I didn't lose my business. How I didn't lose it, I don't know, because I was turning up late, about midday sometimes. And this went on for a long time. This went on for at least a good year, to the point where it was just every single night. And that was my life. And then it would get to the time where the dealer would wake up about 1 o'clock and then it would start all over again. How did you, obviously you paid a massive price for your experiences. How did you eventually sort of come to realize that I can't go on like this? How did you turn your life around? What was the process like? What did you do?
There was a moment, really. It was with my son. I'd let him down so badly, and it was painful enough for me to experience. I mean, coupled with losing so much already, the business and all my money, and nearly another job that I got into, and my life had just become the same thing that I was trying to escape so many times, and I could just see myself either killing myself or I had to change. And when I'd see how much emotional pain I'd caused my son, I was like, I can't do to him what my mum did to me. I cannot do that. So I said he's wrong at that point when that happened. And it wasn't like abuse or anything like that. It was neglect, really. It was he practiced for this gymnastics competition, and he was only, I think, 4 or 5 at the time. And the next day, it was supposed to be on this big competition outside of school. They were taking him to a special school to do it. And I got high the night before, all the way up until the morning. I was doing lines till 7, and I just basically couldn't really speak, let alone drive a car or get to school. So I just turned my phone off, ignored everyone, and told him that we couldn't go to school. He's gone to his mum's that evening, and he has to come back the next day. And when he comes back, he said, "How was school?" and walks through the door and just burst into tears and cried his eyes out and said that everybody else had medals and I didn't get to have one. And it was just, honestly, it was heartbreaking. That was the worst, the lowest I'd ever felt. Do you know what I mean? It's okay affecting, it's not okay, but it doesn't feel as bad affecting other adults who are involved in drug use with you. But affecting an innocent child that you're supposed to love and care for and look after, that just ripped me to pieces. And it's not like I hadn't had many signs like this before, crashing cars and, endangering my own life and having, terrible people around me stealing what sort of stole my car once and had to pay
I had someone steal my car.
Had to pay £5,000 off of their brother to get it back. It was just so many alarm bells, like you said, that should have been enough, but this was the thing that mattered the most, I guess, to me. And I knew that I couldn't have him from that point onwards. And I said to his mum, I can't have him anymore. And I went into my employer at the time and explained where I was at, and could they help me? And they gave me insurance through the business, and I went to rehab for a second time. And I was clean ever since. And it wasn't like a 12-step rehab, but I did go to 12-step fellowships for a couple of years after I've come out. But I create my own process that works for me, and it's hard and it's a rigorous process that not many people would want to do. But every day I wake up at 6 a.m. I meditate and I journal, I do yoga, I pray, and I then do an ice bath, and I sing. And that's me. That's how I stay clean. And I had therapy once a week for 4 years, and for the last year I've had it once a month. And so 5 years of therapy, and I'm still going to therapy. And I think once you get clean, that's the easy bit. That the hard part is understanding why you became an addict in the first place. What is it that it gave you? Because anybody who is strong and insecure. Anybody who is secure and strong in that respect, in terms of they don't need to be validated by anything or anyone, it's very, very rare. In fact, so rare that I've never seen that happen, where someone like that would get addicted to drugs. It doesn't give them anything. So they don't need it. Whereas we use it, it allows us to explain our feelings, the way we feel about ourselves. It may give us something we didn't have, such as confidence. It may make us feel like we are better on it than we were before without it. And maybe because it's flooding our brain with so much dopamine, of course we feel better. But generally, if you feel good without it, then you won't need it or feel so drawn to it. So I think for me, that was the hard part in getting clean. It's facing yourself, and in doing so, I found spirituality to the highest degree that I can possibly learn it, and I practice it on a daily basis. I want to have complete control over my thoughts and my feelings. I believe that we can do it through our higher self, and through connecting with, this sounds silly, with angels and with
Zach, you are on the soul sync at the moment. This is probably exactly the right platform for you to be talking about this.
Yes, I mean, every day I pray to ascended masters. I pray to the All, which is my word for God, because I don't believe in a specific God or any religion for that fact. I believe they're all really founded from Hermeticism, really. That's what I follow, the 7 principles, and I'm in complete awe of it at the moment. It's been the last 18 months of my life has been invested into understanding the unawareness within me, bringing through what is in my subconscious to the conscious mind, and to have control over my emotion and decide how I feel about something, decide how I react to something. And I feel I'm getting better and better and better at it. And I can observe my feelings that I'm so I started the war between higher self and ego. And it is unbelievable. It truly is, like, how much you don't know that you have control or that you're able to control. And yeah, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, you'll make mistakes and your ego is strong. But it's had however many years to exercise its control and its authority over yourself, and obviously paired with a wounded inner child. Those two together are a force to be reckoned with. But the higher self is I guess fueled by love, forgiveness, and understanding, whereas the ego is fueled by fear. So it's darkness versus light, and the more I learn and understand about this, the more excited I become about life, and the more excited I become about how much I can create within myself just by looking inwards. I think we're so trained to look that way, and it's wrong. We should look this way.
I think we are now. I think so many people, I think even as a society, relinquish their power to the influencer, to the person here, to the course over here, rather than looking inwards. And I think I'd never really sought any help, actually, weirdly, for my cocaine addiction. I never went to a doctor. I went to a NA meeting once, but the problem was I walked in and said, no, I'm definitely not an addict. So I was looking around at everyone there who was heroin addicts, and they were in a really bad place, like disheveled clothes, not looking good. And I walked straight in and thought, no, this is not where I need this is not for me. I'm not like these people. So then what I did was I managed to get myself off cocaine just by myself, not talking to anyone, because I had this tremendous amount of shame. And the shame was people looked up to me, at work. People constantly looked up to me as being the leader, this, that, and the other. I felt too much shame to talk about it. So then what I did was I replaced cocaine for cannabis, because I saw that as a
lesser drug.
A lesser drug, yes. So then I managed to completely get off cocaine, but then I was smoking a copious amount of cannabis. I'd have one on the way into work in the morning, one at lunch, and whatever. And then eventually, after about 18 months of doing that, I got psychosis. Then was really sick, and psychosis is the most scariest thing, because I really struggle to explain it. It's really hard to explain to people, but the best way I can explain it is real life is woven into kind of like schizophrenic fiction. So, for instance, I thought, and this is some of the things that I thought were happening to me, I thought Donald Trump was talking to me through a secret Twitter account. And I've actually gone on and found this secret Twitter account. I started a Twitter account that was a pseudo name. And I had to shut it the other day because I went and looked on it, and there's no word of a lie, there was about 5,000 tweets of me tweeting all sorts about the government, corruption, how the hung parliament back when they were trying to sort out Brexit, where that was a fix. So it was like real life was merging with fiction. And honestly, the recovery from psychosis was just crazy. It took years. I worked, believe it or not, I had this cocaine addiction where I still ran a business throughout. I then got psychosis. Most people who have psychosis have a year off. I had 1 week off, immediately back in, made a whole raft of really stupid decisions. I bought a 100 grand Range Rover, which I didn't need a 100 grand Range Rover. Why would I need a car that costs £1,500 a month? I had this car that I couldn't park anywhere. It was so big, you couldn't get it anywhere. And I bought it because I felt safe in it. And do you know what? I have had a problem with cannabis for a long time. And it's only been quite recently that I finally managed to knock it on the head. And the reason why I keep finding myself even recent, up until fairly recent times is, I perceive that it helps me with anxiety, which is bullshit. It doesn't help me with anxiety. It actually causes me way much more anxiety than it does. but it's that crutch. And I've honestly, a lot of the time, gone back and thought to myself, why did I start doing drugs in the first place? And I think it goes back to feeling safe. I think when you look at behavior, we all want to feel loved. We all want to feel safe. And for me, it was a safety blanket. I'm not sure about you, but looking back now, what was it, what emotion was it making you feel safe? What was it about it that was, but you kept making you go back to it?
I think it was hiding the truth, really. Just hiding the truth of how I felt about myself. I created this character through, I guess, abandoning my true self. And, my true self is extremely sweet and soft and cuddly and childish and vulnerable and mushy. And that's the kind of man I am. I'd say, I was, as a child, more into the feminine than the masculine. And I had to be masculine. I've created this masculine, and I remember when it happened, I was about, I think, 8 or 9, and my mum carried on taking us to these hostels, and I was getting beaten up, and I was so angry. And then this sweet boy just went. And as a child, you're incredibly capable mentally of achieving this, disassociation to yourself. In order to avoid the pain. And I think because to be that soft kid, I would experience a lot of pain all the time, to experience all of this emotion, all of this stuff, I was so sensitive to everything. Couldn't be that. It was too hard. It was too painful. So my brain developed a way to not be that. And that was to be tough, to be hard, to be strong, to be brave, to be fearless, to be, anything. I could just do anything and nothing would hurt me. Anything was water off a duck's back to me. Anything that anyone said. And I think as you get older, it's very hard to maintain this almost double life that you've created, this personality that isn't really you. But you don't know this has happened. You're not conscious. You believe that this is you, but you know something's wrong. And when you find drugs, it enables the show to go on. You can continue with this facade. You can continue blotting out the real you. I can continue being almost emotionless as well. I didn't want people to get close to me. I desperately wanted people to get close to me underneath. The little boy did. But the part of me that was created as the protector, almost, there's no way we cannot let anyone close. We do not trust anyone, especially women. These will let you down. They will hurt you. Hurt them before they hurt you. This was the mentality. So, and that totally contradicted who I was. I didn't want to hurt anyone. If anything, I loved women. I wanted to be in love. I wanted to be loved. But the other part of me, the ego, the protector, I was like, no way. We've got to keep everyone away because it's going to be too painful for you. And that involves a lot of really horrible behaviours, in terms of cheating, being dishonest, being unfaithful, pushing friends away, trying to get with people's girlfriends, just being jealous of not jealous of their relationship, or they're not fancying me, wanting to constantly need validation and attention from women to feel enough, all of this stuff that I didn't know was happening, but the drugs enabled that show to go on, and this kind of ruthlessness that I'd created to go on, and really it contradicted everything about who I truly was. And as soon as I stopped taking it, that boy was just there broken and completely lost and completely unaware of who the fuck I'm supposed to be. So that's the other thing about stopping is that's there always, because you feel it when you stop and you try and quit, and then it creeps back and you're just like, no, I can't cope with the overwhelming sense of emotion that is coming my way. I need to keep it down. There is only one way I know how to do that, and that's that drug. It will keep it down. It is a short-term solution to avoid pain, and it works. It does work, but it creates a whole new world of problems. And it only works short-term, and what it does at the same time simultaneously is create even more trauma and suffering and shame and guilt that you must also then get over when you stop. So that's the con. Do you know what I mean? There's the con.
You make such a valid point. I think about your own self. You lose yourself, a sense of self-identity, don't you? But you don't realise it at the time. And I see that in myself as well. I think that a lot of mine was driven by probably the fact that I went to a horrible all-boys school, one of the bottom 5 secondary schools in the country. I didn't know this at the time, but I knew it wasn't a good school. I wouldn't have said it was in the bottom 5, but that came as a surprise. But I think a lot of mine has been probably growing up gay, probably not accepting myself. All throughout school, I was bullied a lot for one thing or another. And I think that although I've always outwardly projected, people would say I'm very confident. People always think I'm very confident, but what I am is a showman. I'm very good at performing and seeking validation. And I come across as a really confident person, but put me in a social group or in a room with new people. It's not so much now, and now I'm kind of much more comfortable with who I am, obviously having been through all of this shit. But back years ago, I probably had a lack of self-worth because I was gay. I had a lack of I actually didn't like my own company either. I was always seeking out the company of other people, and I was probably always trying to be in a relationship to seek validation as well. And what the cocaine gave me in particular was I suddenly felt like the most confident person. I'd go out, people want to talk to me. I'd have this guy interested over here, and it was making me not have to look at myself. And at the time I thought, well, hang on a minute, this is a great thing. It's making me be the person that I want to be. And it was giving me, right, you're going to have to go outside it. Outside it. He could tell that I'm talking about trauma. He's very sensitive, my cat. So I think you're right in what you're saying. And only recently, even so much as recently, I've really had to take a good long look in the mirror and say to myself, look, sometimes when I'm sitting down, I go, oh, I'm not feeling okay. I'm feeling a bit bored. Or should I go out for a glass of wine? I think to myself, no, Jason, no. Because I know that I have the tendency to, I'm of the belief as well that, once you're addicted to something, you are always a recovering addict. Not that I want to label myself, but I'm aware that I have to be very careful because I think that things that make me feel good, I've said this a few times. I think I'm only ever, the fuck it button is there, and I'm only ever not too far away from pushing it. And I just think that's, a bit my personality. But I think that so much of what you've said is so much of what's happened to me and how I felt at the time. And I think that looking back now, I had all those people telling me in the early days of my business, Jason, you're amazing. You've done so well. You should be so proud. People telling me that I'm this, that, and the other. But internally, I did not feel that. I did not feel very successful. I felt very lonely. I'd feel that I'd go from making deals all day to then coming home and not really liking my life. And you can see how people fall down this trap. But in terms of sort of your relationship now, do you drink at all, or is that not even a part of it for you?
No, 5 years now. I've not had a drink or a drug other than ayahuasca, which I did.
Oh wow!
In January this year, I'll do it again because it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, I would say. But I'm applying for punishment, shall we say? But no, it was the hardest thing, but also one of the most beautiful things. Yeah, it took me a few days after to really get understanding about what it was that was going on and why I went through such a horrific experience. But it enabled me to release a lot of pain. But so basically, in short, I spent about 4 to 6 hours screaming, literally screaming. Like if someone walked past, they'd be like, "Someone's dying. Someone is dying in there. What is going on?" And it was all this pain that it was energy, like a release of energy that it had to go. It needed to be removed in order for me to carry on the path I'm going down, and it was just what I needed at the time. And it was.
We actually had someone on the show recently who's runs an ayahuasca retreat. How did you come across it? Where did you go to do it?
I actually had a shaman come to my house and do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's a friend of mine actually. He's training in Peru. He's been a shaman for 5 years now, I want to say maybe more. Um, but yeah,
Oh,
really incredible guy. And yeah, it was magic. Honestly, it was. Everybody says, oh, if you're an addict, you shouldn't do it. And yeah, maybe for some, I identify myself as an addict, but you could not get addicted to that fucking drug. Um, yeah. Why would you want to? Because it is. Oh, for me, it was agonizing. Yeah, second to a month in rehab, talking about my childhood and going through every single specific trauma that I could remember, writing it down and saying that in front of 6, 7 people like didn't know them, but also mental like I was. um, that is the only thing that I can say is harder than that one night of ayahuasca that I did. It was challenging. It really shows you yourself and. Yeah, if you want to see what you're made of, then I suggest go and do it.
it's interesting to hear you talk about it because I only became aware of what ayahuasca was about 8 months ago, and I must admit it's fascinated me. I do you know what? Because I've had psychosis, I don't think it's something that I would even contemplate doing. But I think if I hadn't, it it, it intrigues me. But I think the whole purging thing is what it just
Mm.
doesn't sound pleasant, Zach. What appeals to you to go and want to do it again out of interest?
Um, because of the growth that I've had since doing it. And I said to you recently how much control I'm managing to attain over myself and feelings,
Mm.
actions, behaviors. And these are things I've wanted for the last 5 years, removing so much of me that is ego, that is defensive, that is reactive, and it's becoming less and less and less. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't because I did ayahuasca that's now suddenly that's all happened. All that did was just kind of open my eyes a little bit to something and kind of move something out of the way. It's like, okay, this blockage is kind of here, and now we're going to move it to the side, but you've got to walk through the door. You're going to go and still, and for me, that's still, I show up. Luckily for me, walking through the door is everything that I already do. I still do meditation and breath work and journaling and everything I can get my hands on. I do it every single day. So it kind of just, I can't explain it. It was just really powerful. It was really, really powerful for me. And yeah, I want to do it again because I want to see what else I can learn, what else I can achieve through doing it. It might not be that I carry on doing it, but at the moment, my plan is to do it twice a year and see where I get from it. Don't get me wrong though, the day after I finished the two, because I did two back-to-back sessions, like one day
Oh,
after another.
oh my goodness!
So I did it I did it one night and then the following night, so 2 sessions. And on the third day, I was like, I'm dead doing that again. I was like,
I can't believe
fucking,
you've done it 2 days back to back.
yeah, I was like, why the fuck would
Oh,
anyone want to do that more than once? But then, I was really vulnerable for quite a few days after, and it was only about a week after I kind of was journeying a lot, and it all kind of made sense to me, like why I needed to do it and what I got from it, and the biggest thing I got from it is that I don't need to try so hard. I don't need to try so hard. I don't need to reach some level of spiritual enlightenment. You're already there. You're already there. And it kind of just showed me myself as well. And it also, there was a beautiful moment, the first 3 hours where it was kind of just embraced by my life in terms of how much love I have and the abundance of love and the fact that I have everything that I could ever want and need in abundance, and that there is nothing more that you could ever ask for, and to be as content as you could possibly be. And I feel like I am anyway, but it was almost like I just got hugged by my own life, and it just showed me, how truly lucky I am. And I came away with, even more gratitude than I already had. And I didn't think that was possible because I'm extremely grateful. But yeah, it was beautiful. And yeah, why did I go through it? I don't know. I think anybody who does ayahuasca, and you hear this, it's that you felt called to it. you felt called to it, and I felt called to it for the last 2 years. And I've debated this decision to do it for 2 years
I
because I'm
bet
an
you've
addict.
debated it for a long time because it scares me. When I interviewed the head of the Ayahuasca Foundation, I did come away thinking, would I do it? Would I not? And
Mate,
do you know what?
if you're gonna do it, one day you're gonna wake up and go, "Yeah,
I'm
gonna
doing
do
it.
this." Yeah,
I
and
think it's
until
something where you
then,
have to bet, and there should be
yeah,
no element of doubt before even
no,
attempting that. I want to ask you, I guess from where you are now, if you were going to give your younger 17-year-old self some pearls of wisdom and advice, what would you say to your 17-year-old self? And I guess if he'd listen, is probably one thing.
that the physical material doesn't matter. That you will try your hardest to get the physical material to make yourself feel enough, and it will never work, I promise. So instead of looking outward in, focus on your mind, focus on spirit. They supersede the physical material world. And if you build a life that you don't feel worthy of, you will never keep it. So why would you not prioritize feeling worthy? Prioritize how you feel about yourself. Prioritize your self-worth. And also, that worth is not measured based on material or physical success. Worth, in my opinion, is measured on how much you give to yourself spiritually and mentally every single day. How much you invest into you. It's not what you can physically attain. It's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. Worth is measured by how much you love yourself. How much love, forgiveness, and understanding you can give to yourself on a daily basis so that you can feel happy with either nothing or everything. Because what is the point in building this incredible life from a material perspective if you still hate yourself when you're living in it?
I think so many people honestly think that material. Well, I was of that belief when I entered the recruitment industry. I thought money would be the answer to all my problems. My God, money has never brought me so many problems. Actually, you know, and I wanted to ask as well. Then, what advice would you give to people that might be thinking, you know, perhaps I've got behaviours which I think I might be an addict, or you know, or perhaps in this.
What advice would I give them?
Yeah, what advice would you give to people that are perhaps, you know, struggling with addiction themselves?
To do their best to not feel ashamed. Because
Yeah.
feeling ashamed of being an addict is the thing that keeps you sick. I think it stops you being honest with people about who you really are or where you're really at, because you're afraid of judgment and how people will look at you from that point onwards. We are fortunate enough now to live in a world where the majority of things are accepted. I mean, on the scale of things that are accepted in society, addiction is fucking very low, in fact. Do you know what I mean? There is a massive, worldwide acceptance of so much now. So don't feel like you can't wear your addiction almost like part of yourself. For example, when I first got clean, when I come out of rehab, nobody had known where I'd gone. But when I came out, I messaged and emailed everyone that I worked with and that I hung out with and told them exactly where I've been. And I no longer wanted to spend time with people doing anything that related to drink or drugs. So if you can really something else that's for, fun and that involves, just, I don't know, natural things that doesn't have to be
simple life pleasures, perhaps.
Yeah, simple life pleasures, and funny enough, not one person come back to this, but that was okay. It opened up space for me to fill with new people who did want to spend time with me doing that, who did want to invest in me and get to know the real me, not this fake person I created. So yeah, just to not be afraid, of judgment, and to not be afraid of speaking openly and honestly. And if you have, and you're lucky enough to have people that love you and care about you, then go to them immediately, because I didn't have that. I didn't have both my parents were addicts. We are going to. So I didn't have a family around me of support. I didn't have a support network. I had to go and get one and build it and build from scratch my own family and friendships from zero. And some of you out there will be so lucky that you've got a loving mother and father that care about you, that will be willing to go to the ends of the earth to help you. Don't be afraid to tell them, because they will be there for you, you know.
I agree with that. I think shame is something that stopped me from talking about it for so long, because, you know, I think it's, do you know what? I think I have such high standards of myself that I felt the shame for a very long time in the judgment, and even to the point where I only mentioned to my own doctor a year ago the fact that I was a recovering addict, when I recovered from that about 6 years ago. And I've only just spoken to a medical professional, but the only reason it's been that long is because I felt the shame of having to admit it. I almost felt, you know, saying to the doctor, you know, I've been through this, and I've, you know, because in effect, I was the one putting it up my nose, Zach. It was no one else. So it was that shame of having to admit that. And I think what makes it even worse was the fact that in my story, you know, I talk about the fact I was a police officer, and even that in itself makes me have so much shame because of I was never cut out to be a police officer, not because I break the law, mainly because I don't want to be a robot, and I have too much compassion for people. I remember I used to obviously come into contact with drugs a lot in the police, and I didn't like arresting people because I used to look at people as if they were sick. And then it's just so ironic myself that because of probably the trauma I experienced in the police, I found myself in very much the same situation. Zach, I'm so grateful for you coming onto this show, because I think that your rawness and your real honesty, and actually I want to talk about your podcast, because it did capture my eye, and without it we wouldn't even be talking now. What made you start it? Because your conversations on there, and you must obviously tell people what it is, and if you do want to find out, just go show notes. What made you start it? And, you know, how did you even think to want to talk in such level of honesty? Because it's not just an audio experience. Yours is a full-on video experience as well.
Yeah. To be honest with you, because of my community experience in all those sales, and I guess when I started becoming honest with people about who I was and kind of wearing my own skin, it was kind of like I unleashed this part of myself, and I just down to never really hide anything about myself ever again. And I'm quite comfortable in who I am, and whether that be negative or positive, it doesn't really matter. I try to expose myself for all of the trauma and the suffering that I've gone through as well. I started on TikTok, you know, I started my social media there, and I was just telling stories really about my life and how challenging it's been and how recovery has been. And, you know, I wasn't the first person to start doing anything to do with addiction and recovery on TikTok. This was in 2021. And yeah, it just like to blow up. And I kind of try to turn that into a music addiction as well, though. Straight on to, with Disney, brilliant. So,
the endorphins running every time you get another.
I switched addiction. Just because I put the drugs down didn't mean I wasn't an addict for a long time. I mean, now I'd say in the last year or so, I stopped behaving addictive in an addictive way towards everything. But yeah, that kind of honesty and vulnerability. I noticed how much people engaged with it. People kind of adored it, and they really saw themselves, I guess, in what I was saying. So that was the idea right behind the side of the podcast. And also I had a friend that I started it with, and funnily enough, we fell out over an ayahuasca disagreement. But we're now friends again, and, you know, we're phoned back on the show. But yeah, he was suggesting it. We wanted to do it, so yeah, we started the podcast, and we wanted to talk openly, honestly, as men, to be kind of courageous in being vulnerable. It wasn't necessarily just to be about addiction, and the podcast isn't just about addiction. There's many different attributes, things that we've talked about, like social media and trauma, and there'd be so much more as well. Just the most recent one to have been back on about cocaine, and yeah, we'll circle back to spirituality and many other topics. It's really just about men being able to speak vulnerably and to kind of come clean about their behaviors and things that most people might be ashamed of speaking about. That they can see two men saying it for the audience of thousands to hear. Well, if they're talking about it, then there you go again.
Well, Zach, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be sitting in now probably talking about my own addiction past as much. And I just thank you for what you do. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And hopefully this episode will help a lot of other people with their own battles, whatever it might be. But, it's been such an honour to have you on the Soul Sync. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. And it's been a pleasure. Likewise.